I actually want everybody on the call right now to think about what are the brands that really excite you right now. The ones that you rave about, the ones that you tell your friends and family about, that you can't wait to buy, that as soon as you can, you'll buy it, even if it doesn't make rational sense. So take a moment in the chat area and just share what brands come to mind when I say that. What do you rave about? Which brands do you tell all your friends about? While you're writing the answer to that question, I want you to ask yourself why on earth you get so excited about a product or service. And I really want you to think about this, because with all the brands that exist and with all the competitors that these brands have, why do you get excited about them? Because I want you to be asking this about your own brand, the brand that you create, is how do you get people excited about you, raving about you, telling all their friends about you? And I can guarantee if I looked at all of the brands that people are putting in the chat, there's probably 3 fundamentals that unify all of those brands together. The first is that it feels like this brand is made just for you, your needs, your dreams, your greatest challenges. So I refer to this as magnetic. So some of the best brands in the world feel like they are an extension of you or an extension of who you want to become. And I should just mention, I can hear somebody typing, so if you could just mute yourself, that would be great. So the best brands in the world help you to become who you want to be or identify with who you are. And the same is true when we meet somebody. You know, we meet somebody for the first time. There's some people that we're just magnified to. We feel this instant connection, and the same is true with brands. So that first element is that those brands are not magnetic. The second thing that you'll see that unifies those brands is it feels like something you can't get somewhere else. So I refer to this as novel. Our brains are hardwired to pay attention to things that are different, things that are unique, not the mundane. So there's something unique about the brand. And the third thing is they're known for one thing. So as opposed to being something pretty general, it does one thing exceptionally well, and I refer to this as being singular.
Hey, Lara, I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. We're actually not seeing what you're doing. So either we need to fix that, or I'm just telling you so that you can just talk to us and not worry about taking the notes. We're seeing sort of the home screen and not the full screen like we did before.
Okay.
But I'm pretty engaged even without the writing, and I'm guessing the audience is too. So if you want to just talk to us instead of writing, I think that's probably fine.
Sure. I hopefully have fixed it. If not,
yeah. You go.
Yeah. Awesome. So magnetic, novel, singular. Thank you for letting me. And with a singular note, I really want you to think about this, because if there's anything that you take away from today's talk, I want you to remember this. The most important point for businesses are to be focused on a single thing. And this is the most contentious point for most small business owners who are building a brand, because they usually say things like, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And if I focus on just one of those things, I'm missing all of this market that I could be going after. But the opposite is true, because if you do all of these things, what you end up doing is you're now competing with everyone else who also does all of those things. So you increase your competition pool dramatically, and you're not memorable. Think about anytime somebody says, do you know a product I can use on curly hair? Do you know a really great dentist with children? They're very specific about what their needs are, and they'll think of a brand that fits that singular point of difference. So if I was to illustrate this for you, I love a business management software called Dubsado. It basically replaces my CRM system, my billing software, my scheduling software, and all of my manual forms and proposals and quotes and emails and SOPs, standard operating procedures. It when I use it, makes me feel unbelievably organized in my business and totally streamlined. Basically, all of my work has been automated and it's totally customized to me and my business. So there's nothing that I have found that could do all of these things in one software, and I'm now paying a fraction of what I was using 4 different software solutions. So if I know anyone who's looking to streamline their business or their communications or their processes, I recommend Dubsado. It's magnetic, it's novel, and it's singular.
So Lara, you talk, and I think you were going to get to this, you talk about how your business needs to have a disruptive cure. So that's sort of the basis of building your brand. So tell us, what is a disruptive cure? Because I'm not sure that we know if our businesses have one.
Right. So it's a really good question. And really the fundamentals of any business come down to 3 strategic choices. So this visual that you're seeing right now is something I call Domination Mountain. It's how to dominate or become a leader in your market. You have 3 strategic choices. So there's a choice that runs up one side of the mountain, a choice that runs up the other side of the mountain, or a choice at the pinnacle. You only have 3 choices. There aren't 4, there aren't 5, there aren't 6, only 3. So the first choice, and I'll get to what I mean by disruptive cure in a second, but the first choice you have is you can become a noise leader, which means that you spend more money than anybody else in your industry on advertising and marketing, right? It's very difficult for a lot of small businesses to compete in this area because you don't have the budgets. So it's a strategy that a lot of bigger businesses are using to stamp out their smaller competitors. So this is hard for us to do because it costs money. The other choice we have is to be the low cost leader. Oops. All right, so what that means is you ensure that your prices are the lowest in your industry across the board. So not just one product, but across the board, you guarantee the lowest prices. This is what we often refer to as a race to the bottom, because if a competitor comes in and offers lower pricing, how do you respond? You have to lower your pricing and margins end up getting shrunken. So this can sometimes be a challenge for a lot of businesses and small businesses specifically. So what is the other choice you have available to you as a business? The only other option you have is to have what I call a disruptive cure. Okay, so what do I mean by disruptive cure? It means that for a very specific group of consumers in your market, you look, say, and act differently than others in your industry. And a lot of people get confused by this idea of disruption, because disruption sounds like something I have to invest heavily in, right? I have to invest a lot of dollars into research and development. But disruption can come simply by the way that you communicate your brand. So for those of you who are operating a business right now, I'd love for you to put in the chat area, are you the low cost leader? Are you the noise leader? Do you have a disruptive cure? Or when I give you those 3 options, do you think, I don't really have any one of those? Put none in the chat bar. So your comment is either going to be low cost leader, noise leader, or disruptive cure, or none. So here's
nuns.
What's that?
I'm seeing a lot of nuns.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of those as well. Great. So the bottom line is that a lot of small businesses think they have a disruptive cure. Bain Research did a study and they found that 80% of leaders within an organization think that they have a difference in their brand versus others, which is a great statistic. The problem is that only 8% of their customers actually agree. So that's a huge disparity. 80% think that they're different, only 8% of their customers think they are. And what the customer thinks is ultimately what matters. Because if we're looking at, 3 different choices and they're all pretty much the same, we are inclined to pay the lowest possible price. And unless you want to be the low cost leader, you need to have a disruptive cure. So a lot of these businesses will use terms like more or better. And if you use those terms, I want you to really think about stop using them. So they'll say things like, we've won more awards, we have more offices, we're better at this or that. And you might think, well, that's not so bad. But what those words do is they tether you to your competitor. You're creating a direct comparison between you and your competition, and you're differentiating in degrees. And oftentimes it's very difficult for your customers to understand the value of those degrees. So you become a slightly better version of somebody else, or in most cases, you think you're better than your competitors, but your customers think you're exactly the same, just more expensive. So what I want you to think about is, and really think about your company or what you're looking to create. Can you describe the single problem you solve for a very specific person when you think about your company? If you said no, you're not magnetic. If you didn't exist, would your customers be able to get what you offer from somebody else at the same or better price or same or better service? If you said yes, then you're not novel. Do you or other people find it difficult to describe what you do in a short sentence? It's very easy to get somebody to describe their business and they go on and on and on, or they describe it in 5 or 6 or 10 or a paragraph instead of a single sentence. So if you said that yes, you find it difficult, then you are not singular in your offering. So businesses who aren't magnetic, novel, or singular fall into a land I call the land of ambiguity. Nobody, they're good enough. They offer good enough products and services. But oftentimes those companies will hear things like, you're too expensive. They're losing out to competitors who are lower price. They have to lower their prices to win business. They have to spend a lot of money on marketing to stand out. And they hear, why should I choose you? And don't really know how to answer that question. So it makes the sales process very difficult. So businesses who are in the land of ambiguity survive in the good times. They do okay. But during times like these, where every market is getting more competitive, the land of ambiguity is a really scary place to be. So I hope I answered that question for you.
You did.
Okay.
So I want to give the audience a chance to ask you some questions. So audience, you start typing your questions in the chat and I will ask them in a few minutes. But Lara, before we get to that, yeah. I feel like the thing here is that even if you are one of these, even if you find a disruptive cure, right? You have to be able to communicate that to your customers. So can you talk a little bit, while people are starting to type their questions in, can you talk a little bit about how do you communicate it?
Yeah, so absolutely. Some of the best brands in the world have died a dusty death on shelf because nobody knew they existed. So absolutely, even if you have something that is really unique, that people love, that people are magnetized to, you still need to be able to promote it or communicate it to your potential market. Sales and marketing is incredibly important to brands. So crafting a strategy to get your brand in the hands of the right people is one of the most important things you need to do to grow your business. And strategy comes down to 3 fundamentals. So the first fundamental is market. So the first thing you need to know is, who are you looking to connect with? And this may sound really simple, but so many small businesses jump into social media because it's free and easy and never really stop to think about, is this where my market is? And is this the type of tool my market is using to find products or services like me? Let me ask you a question. So if you were to start a new burger business, a burger restaurant, where would be the best location? And it might sound like yeah, I'll ask you, sure.
Outside of high school.
Now, why did you say that?
I just figured there'd be a lot of hungry kids coming out of there who aren't worried about eating healthy.
So, and that's the key. So the answer is, where there are hungry patrons who love burgers, right? There's no sense in setting up a beef burger shop in a town full of vegans, or setting it up where there aren't people that are hungry, they're well fed. So you go where your people are and where they want to buy. And the way in which to do that is you need to watch them, watch what they're doing in the purchase process. Ask them. So if you have customers, where did you go to find companies like mine? You know, what is the process? Who are you asking? What were you looking for? Or be like them. Sometimes as marketers, we just have to be intuitive and think about, okay, so if this is the type of customers I'm going after, where are they going to find businesses like mine? And you also want to think about what other brands are part of their world, right? If we understand who the market is, what other brands are they buying into? One of the most powerful things you can do to build your brand is to leverage other people's audiences. So other people, you know, the Chamber is a perfect example. The Chamber has a whole bunch of small businesses. So if I'm a business looking to connect with other small businesses, I can try and grow that market myself, or I can try and leverage a market that somebody else has built. So think about what are some complementary brands. Like if you are a local hairdresser, maybe there's a local clothing store or restaurant that's in your area that services the same market. And how do you create partnerships with those people? So really think about what does their ecosystem look like? And the only way you can do that is to understand who your market is. So the second thing is money. It's a really important consideration because especially small businesses, especially startups, you don't have big budgets. So do you have a budget? I won't go into detail on this because this can get really complicated, but there's 4 different types of media. There's paid, earned, owned, and rented media. So when you're taking a look at how am I going to distribute or allocate my funds, whatever funds I have, am I going to be using paid media like search engine marketing, directories, influencers, people that I have to pay or things that I have to pay into, ads, in order to get my message out to people. Earned media is referrals, testimonials, ratings, reviews, press, search engine optimization. I've earned this right. Somebody else is talking about me in some way, shape, or form. Rented is social media. A lot of times we think we own that, but it can be taken away in a heartbeat. So our Facebook can be shut down. Our group can be closed for some reason. And then there's the own things, the things that we own, like our website, store signage, product packaging, where we can communicate to our customers. But all of that depends on whether you have a budget or you don't, and how much that budget is. The last point that I'll mention is message is incredibly important to understanding how to market your products or services. So what message do you actually want to get out? And this is important because it should influence what channels you use. And by channel, I mean, are you using Facebook or Instagram? Are you using email marketing? Are you using text? What channel are you using? Well, if I understand what the messages I'm looking to get across, some of those work better in video, some of them work better in long form writing. And then what is the best way to deliver the message, right? Is it audio? Is it print? Is it through educating people? Is it making people go direct to the sale because they've got an immediate need right now and they need a solution right now? So message is also really important. And I can give an example of that. I know we're kind of getting to the time where we wanted to move into Q&A, but happy to talk about an example there.
Sure, and we have about 5 minutes until we were supposed to end. We could go a little bit long if you're able. If you want to, we can, and sure. It's up to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I have a few different examples of different brands that I've worked with, especially through so I run a group coaching program. I worked with a whole bunch of brands that really had to pivot their businesses during this pandemic, or start a new business. But there was one business that I worked with, which was a band, not brand, but band. In other words, a group of singers in Chicago. And they had really great brand awareness in their hometown, but didn't have people who knew about them outside of Chicago. So their goal was they wanted to connect with event planners who plan events to get their band in front of them in hopes that they'd hire them as entertainment for an upcoming event. We had a big challenge. The challenges were, number one, great bands are a dime a dozen, and good event planners are bombarded with hundreds of band demos every single month. The second challenge was, after paying me for my consulting services, they had a budget of $0 to actually do this. So we had to get really creative and very guerrilla. You've heard of guerrilla marketing. It was like getting quite guerrilla. So my first goal was to understand what made this band novel, magnetic, singular. And what became clear was, in addition to singing top 40 music, which is not very unique at all, they love to play with the words of a song and work around the theme of an event and the people involved in the event. So they love to incorporate the president's message into a song, for example. And they were, in essence, this idea of customized top 40 music. So I understood what made them unique. The next thing I needed to understand was where their buying market was congregating. Where were they? And where were they making those types of decisions to buy bands for entertainment? And I learned that a conference was going to be taking place in New York with some of, in a month from when I learned about this, with some of the leading event planners in the United States. And it was a pretty coveted event. My client had no ticket, no plans to be there, but we did have an idea. So we scanned the event's hashtag for some of the biggest influencers who were actually talking about this event, the name of the organizer, some of the details of the event. And then we put together a 2-minute music video using what was a really popular song at the time, and all of the details that we'd gleaned. So they customized the words of the music to kind of incorporate some of the names and all of the stuff that we had learned through our research. We then posted the video, tagged the influencers, used the hashtag, and put the video out into the world. And then we kind of waited, like with fingers crossed. And the video received hundreds of retweets. So within the community, it went viral. It's not viral in terms of what we would typically think. And so that's also an important thing. Vanity metrics mean nothing. We cared about that community. It went viral within the community, hundreds of thousands of plays. But more importantly, the organizer of that event reached out to us and asked if we would headline their event. So actually be the live entertainment for their event. And also open their second event, which was taking place a few months down the road from then. And it started a relationship that would allow my client to be seen as an industry influencer, all by spending zero money, but understanding they didn't have money, they knew what the message was, they knew who the market was, and so we were able to choose the right medium and the right message and how to really showcase and stand out in a sea of noise.
That's great. Thank you so much. That's a really good example for people. I love the band brand. So we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to just throw a couple quick Q&As at you. This person, and I think this is representative of what a lot of people are struggling with. How does somebody be very focused on their brand, but not being so niche that they're alienating a whole bunch of people? So like, where do they find their sweet spot?
So alienating a whole bunch of people is there's kind of like a pendulum, obviously. It's okay to alienate people. Some of the best brands in the world alienate people. Apple alienates a lot of people. You know, there's a tremendous amount of brands we can think of that are for a specific group of people and not for a specific group of people. So you really need to understand the micro niche. Like, who are you going to be a hero for? So I call them a micro niche. They're different than a target market. So a target market is based on demographics. Micro niche is the smallest possible audience who have a shared set of beliefs and values, pains, dreams, obstacles. You have to make sure that that market is big enough to sustain your business. What you're talking about is, I don't want to alienate so many people that I've got a market of 3. So you have to make sure that once you've defined who that micro niche is, that there's a big enough audience out there to sustain your business. And only think about it within the scope of a few years, because what you can do over time is you can expand your micro niche, or you can go after different micro niches. But if you just focused on this one micro niche and it can sustain you for years to come, what you now understand is, what are the triggers that motivate those people to want to choose to do business with me? So what is the friction point that you solve for them that's currently untapped in the market? So I have to understand my micro niche, then I have to understand my triggers, and some of the best brands in the world have an anti-narrative. So inside of every industry that exists, there are narratives that also exist. So those are the norms in your industry that govern how we operate as businesses. Great brands create an anti-narrative that zigs when everybody else is zagging. I mentioned Apple before. Apple did it, Mac versus PC. PC was Orwellian, Mac was the rebel. Hims, if you're familiar with them, one of the world's leading men's health brand, they did this when they gave permission to men to have a safe place and to care about things like erectile dysfunction, hair loss, and adult acne, things that otherwise they would have felt shame because the norms were men don't talk about this. And the norms were also men didn't share it, so men felt very isolated when they experienced these things. So it's okay to be divisive as long as you are clear on your market and that market is big enough to sustain your business.
That actually takes me to your next question. I just want to tell the audience we are over time by a couple minutes. I'll take a couple more questions though, if the audience wants to hang around. This person has an interesting question, and it's basically like you said before, like you don't want to connect, I forget the word, like hinge yourself to your competition, right? You know, we're cheaper or we're better. But this person's saying, you know, essentially the reality is though you do want people to know that you're different than your competition. So how do you communicate that your brand is different without making those dangerous comparisons?
So there's a number of different ways to do it. There was a law firm, I can't remember their names now. The way that they did it is through their language. So when they communicated via their website, via any communication to potential customers, they did so in a way that felt distinctly different than anybody else who was a lawyer. When we think of lawyers, there are a few words that come to mind. It might be expensive. It might be, clock punchers. And I apologize to any lawyers who are on the call right now. There's obviously some benefits, and there's a reason why we go to lawyers. But they're seen generally speaking as very buttoned up, very professional, and there to solve problems. This particular law firm came out and they said, we're your friends. We're here to help you. We understand what you're going through. We specialize, so they specialize in creative businesses. So we know what you're trying to do is create a legacy. They talked in a language that meant something to a creative. They didn't speak lawyer speak, and that was one way of differentiating them. So there's many different ways you can differentiate. There's, other businesses that have created a business model that is so different from their competitors that they are undeniably different. But that's where disruption comes. Disruption doesn't have to come through R&D. It can come through your business model. It can come through unique products or services that you offer, or ways of delivering those products and services that solve a problem that nobody else has solved. Or it can be through the language you use to connect with your customers.
We have time for one more question, and I think this will apply to a lot of people. This person is asking, I have a brand new small business with no history, so no track record, no customers to talk about what a great business I have. So how, if you're starting from scratch, how do you create a brand identity that resonates with people when you've got no track record to prove your worth?
This one's an easy answer for me. Find a way to get a track record. So even if you have no paying clients and you have started a business, it's a tough pill to swallow. And I'm not suggesting that it's a sustainable business model to do free work or discounted work. But if you have no experience to speak to, the best way to get experience is to get experience in any way you can. So if you have no track record, find a client that you think is a really good client for you, that is the type of client you would like to work with, and do work for them. Find a way to do work for them so that you can get results. This is another point that I do want to mention, which is there are words that you'll find in your industry people say over and over and over again. And there's words that are used consistently like turnkey solutions and amazing customer service and all of these things. They mean nothing to a potential customer because many of them are earned traits. In other words, the only way I know you're great at customer service is if I hand you money and do business with you. And yet anybody can say it. So it's very difficult to differentiate yourself. One way of doing that is to have proof. 95% of our clients become repeat customers. That's a great way of showing I must have really good customer service. So proof becomes really important through marketing. So if you don't have any proof, figure out a way to get it.
Great. Thank you. We're going to end on that note. I want to say thank you so much, Lara. Thank you so much to our audience. We had a really great turnout. So
Jeanette,
as a
mention one more thing. Sorry,
Sure.
before which is I am running a group coaching program, which is launching April 1st. In the workbook that you have a link to it. I am giving a special rate for all U.S. Chamber members. That rate will be ending on Monday. So again, in the workbook, you've got a link to that. You've also got a link for a way to get in touch with me if you do need to talk about your brand. But I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before we go.
Great. Thank you so much. So thank you to you again. Thank you to our audience. And I want to thank our sponsors, ADP, FedEx, MetLife, Square, and Staples Connect. For everyone, we're going to be doing our next co-roadmap for rebuilding session on Thursday, March 4th at 12 noon Eastern time. And at that point, we'll be discussing financial planning for business owners. And we're going to drop the registration for that event into the chat now. So thank you, Lara. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a great afternoon. That's it. Thanks, Lara.